Welcome back to Under Oath. Today we got journalist, talk show host, and author Chris Mathews. Chris, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I got to tell you, this is such a pleasure. I'm like blown away. I've watched your career for so many years, and always the next question is, what's next? Are you getting a new show, new book? What do we have going on?
Well, I got to get this one sold, so I'm doing that with you. Sell this book. I've been very lucky with writing books about the Kennedys, Jack and Bobby, and they seem to reach something of maybe people my generation, somewhat a little younger. They do look back to that era positively, and the civil rights era, the Cuban Missile Crisis of all things. They think we really had something going there. We really seem to have a national spirit, and trying to recover it again. I think we're really trying to recover it. It's not. Bobby lost election. He lost a primary in Oregon. And I tell you, he accepted it completely. He said, maybe I should go back to New York and fight for black people. Why? Maybe this is not what I should be doing. This empathy for himself, recognition that he had problems, was really extraordinary in our politics. It's not like today we have a bully who's president who can basically say, I'm always right, and I always win elections. Bobby would admit when he lost an election and admit when he was wrong. He'd say, I didn't lose a lot of sleep over black civil rights before I was attorney general. And he said he was for the Vietnam War until he had to run and defend it. He was an unusual politician. He admitted his defeats and his mistakes.
You know, the one thing I know, you and I have the benefit of not growing up with cell phones. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have everything. In fact, a lot of times I think the American people lived in what we'll call ignorant bliss, where the only information we got was what a newspaper told us or what a host would tell us. I mean, do you think we miss those times?
Well, I'll tell you what's going on. This is terrible. I was in New York last week. I asked the woman at the desk at the hotel I was staying at, I said, where can I get a newspaper? Where can I get a newspaper? I can't tell you. There are no newspapers. Nowhere in New York City can you get the New York Post or the New York Times. They don't exist. There are no papers. At the newsstands are not newsstands. They're candy stores. They don't sell newspapers anymore. It's rotten. And in small towns of America, I was out campaigning, covering the campaign in 2024. And I got to tell you, these small towns don't have newspapers. They don't have any conversation. They're arid. They're empty of ideas and thinking. They don't talk about local issues, or it's just anger. I asked the guy how he's going to vote. He says, how are you going to vote? It's all fighting words. And it just is. And it works to this president's success so far. And but I mean, they used to remember something called gift shops. Every small town had a gift shop. It's where you bought little doodads for somebody for a special occasion, a birthday or something, or anniversary. It doesn't exist anymore. It's all at Walmarts and stuff somewhere out of town. And there's no culture. I don't want to be too sophisticated about it, but there's no culture in small towns right now.
Well, the hard thing is, I write too, and people don't read anymore. Only people from my generation, you're in your 20s, you don't read anymore. You get all your information off of Apple News or a clip coming across your feed. I mean, how do we go back to the times where we want to be educated? Okay,
we're watching Steve Colbert or you're watching Jimmy Kimmel. How do they know the joke? How do they understand the setup to the joke? I mean, they all laugh. They all laugh in rhythm and the cadence is all there. But I said, wait a minute, where did you learn about that issue? How do you know about Epstein and the dossier or whatever? How do you know about, do you read the paper? How do you know? They must pick it up in clips and just instantaneous stuff. But it's not long term.
I mean, I was doing stand-up the other night, and I'm watching everybody, and all you have to do is mention somebody. You mention Trump, you mention Epstein, you mention Biden, and people just go nuts. They just go nuts.
Yeah, I know. They don't know. My wife always warns me. She says, they don't know who Tip O'Neill is.
No.
I worked for him for 6 years. They don't know who he was. I don't know. I remind them of who he was, but I'm not sure they have a fresh memory. Jack Kennedy used to say that the reason he campaigned early, why he would go out early to campaign, was because people forget things. Like, why do you think people advertise Coca-Cola? Everybody knows there's Coca-Cola. They know what it is, what it tastes like. You have to remind them of it regularly. You have to constantly remind people of a product like Coca-Cola, because that's how they remind themselves of it. Because people's memories are so short. And that's what Kennedy said,
Well, it's true. I mean, you deal with people all the time. I can't tell you, I try cases all over the country, and juries are not sophisticated. You basically have to feed it to them 50 times before they hear it.
Yeah, but I guess that's what we have to do. I guess that's the nature of the business we're in right now, reminding us. But I think I want to remind people of Bobby Kennedy, because what's happening today, we have a guy out there saying, don't get vaccinated. Welcome back measles. Welcome back polio. There's no memory that, hey, we had a guy named Jonas Salk. We had a guy who magically came up with a solution to polio. And we ought to remember that and get our shots, When I was in the Peace Corps over in Africa, one thing, the African kids loved getting shots, because when they got a needle put in their arm, it hurt. And they knew that's how it worked. That's going to help me because it hurts. And if it hurts me, it's going to be good for me. And now we have a guy going around saying, don't do that. Well, that's a little wacky.
It's definitely something. And I mean, when you're writing this book and you're going, I'm writing a book about the father of this guy who's running around saying what he's saying. I mean, does it affect you when you're writing, or do you go, I don't even have to think about that?
Well, I made a point when I wrote the book and finished it to call him up. I got a phone number from somebody, and I got him on his private line, and I say, I just read a book about your dad. And I knew him from his environmental days. And it's a positive book. And I don't mention you. No controversy. And I hung up. It's like a strange kind of a mystery to tell him about a book. I'm sure he knows about the book. But he's a strange guy. Let's put it that way. Strange guy.
Now, I don't know what it is, but for some reason, we can't talk to each other anymore. If you do talk to somebody on the other side, people think you're a traitor. I mean, when did we stop wanting to educate ourselves?
Well, the word traitor's been thrown around because somebody wants to hear more about the Epstein files. They're going to vote on that today. And traitor's a word that shouldn't be used that much. I mean, you're opposed to your government. You're opposed to your country. Even if we disagree about the way we should govern ourselves, I was a Capitol cop, and I was on the defensive side when the mob tried to destroy the Capitol. And I remember a guy said to me, what do you think the little man, what moves the little man? Why does he care about things? And he said, because his government, he cares about the country. He cares about, it's all he's got. So I think the people on the MAGA side have a great patriotism of a kind. I don't think they're fully thoughtful about democracy or how members of Congress have to vote for themselves and stand up for what they believe. But there's a real kind of bullying going on now in our country. Them feeling that they have to do what the president wants. It's just a fact. And that goes to Speaker Johnson and Senator Thune. They do what they're told, which is scary.
What really bothers me is the hundreds of millions of dollars and potentially billions of dollars it takes to get elected, because you're going to have to, how can I say it, pay that back sometime.
Yeah, that is a rotten deal. I look at Schumer and I go, that guy's, he's brain dead. He spends so much time raising money on the phone, constantly raising money. How can a guy have that IQ? They went to Harvard and Yale and everything. How does this guy not have an IQ? He seems to not have one. I think he just spends all his time raising money. What else? What explains the deterioration of his brain? I mean, he's obviously popular among his senators. The Democrats vote for him. But I think when all you do is raise money, they have a little. I had a guy working for me, and he said, his job was to drive the van from the Democratic headquarters over to the Capitol whenever there's a vote. And he had to bring the new freshman members of Congress over to vote. And the rest of the time, they were out there raising money. In other words, their main job as members of Congress was raising money. And that's what he did. I mean, this guy's job was to just bring him over to vote once in a while. But the rest of the time, they're sitting there looking out the window at the train going by, raising money all day. And they have a control, what's it called? A manager who sits next to them and makes sure they don't hang up. They have to keep on the phone raising money. Is that sick? You know,
it's painful because, you know, I've been around long enough and I've been involved with some government, and I know you have to pay those favors back. And I think the number is like 7 times what the donation is, whether it be helping out with regulation, whether it be contracts, whether it be something. I mean, these people aren't donating millions of dollars because they care about democracy.
No, they want something.
And we forget that. And
I think that's what some are generally interested in Israel or something like that, but a lot of them just want particular things, and they let you know what that is.
I mean, the tough thing for me is when I think about that both parties are run by their far poles, and that, you know, the people in the middle don't get heard sometimes.
Well, they don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
That's what, I think. What's the average person give to a politician? Nothing. The average person doesn't give any money to a politician. And people might kick in $5 or $10, but the big money comes in from the trade associations, from the PACs, political action committees. And if you want to get reelected over and over again, I mean, look at Bobby Casey from Pennsylvania. What he had to run for reelection a number of times. He ended up running out of money eventually. He runs against David McCormick, who had all the money in the world. And I go, well, that must be really depressing. They have to go out and find campaign workers and then find money. Meanwhile, you're voting in the public interest every day. Well, you're not going to raise a whole lot of money voting in the public interest. You're not.
No, it's a difficult thing to imagine that our country runs like that. And right now, I think the worst thing that happens to our country is when we don't have an enemy, we turn on ourselves.
Yeah, that's true. And I think we do have an enemy, though. We have Russia right now. Russia going after Ukraine. I don't think we need to fight Venezuela and countries like that. And we have to spend money on Argentina. Trump ran. One effective thing he argued in his campaigns was stupid wars. Stop fighting stupid wars and stop spending money on these things. He was right. We weren't getting anywhere in Afghanistan or Iraq. We weren't getting anywhere. We're just feeding the PR.
There's a lot of money in war. You know, we forget that, you know, guns and bullets, you know, somebody's getting paid.
Yeah. Well, Bobby Kennedy was against all that. He was against fighting in Vietnam and the American war in Vietnam. He wanted that to end. And maybe if he'd gotten in there, the war would have ended a lot faster.
When you decide to write a book, for example, like you've written a lot about the Kennedys, I mean, I assume as you're writing this book, you know, it's romantic. You feel like I miss those times and I wish people could see what I saw.
I think you're right. I think there's a lot of romanticism in writing a book. Because, there's a lot. Why do we love World War II? Because we were on the good guys' side. And, you know, people of the most popular movies in the world are World War II movies. They always will be, and especially in European theater. We like being the good guys. In fact, I write in this book on Bobby, Lessons from Bobby, I say, we'll be great when we try our best to be good. We're the good guys. And we were with civil rights, that's for sure. And we did the right thing.
You know, people always ask me about when something becomes a dinosaur. For example, when does things become the milk bottle? You mentioned newspapers. You know, now we're going from nightly news to podcasts. You know, I think we just move and we have to adapt to it.
Well, I grew up with Walter Cronkite and Eric Seberide on CBS. And I loved going to the Student Union every night, 1968, early 68. and watching Eric Severide comment on the war and comment on Bobby Kennedy and Gene McCarthy. Those were heroic times, and you had good guys trying to change national policy, and you knew who they were, and you knew who the other guys were too. And you're right; it was romantic.
Now, unlike a lot of journalists, you have been in the belly of the beast with Tip O'Neill and everything. Did the level of power you saw, whether it be in private industries or in politics, did it ever give you pause? Did it ever go, God, this is scary?
No, I mean, I think what Tip and to some extent Reagan agreed upon was remarkable. They were both older men, and Tip was older than Reagan even, and they wanted to save Social Security, for example, and they had to figure out a way to do it. And it was almost like a kidnapping case. They had to do it in a way that they would not screw each other, and they did that. But Tip would do things like when Reagan was going over to meet Gorbachev, basically end the Cold War, he would say to his people, back up Reagan. We only have one country. So they would agree that way. It was like, it doesn't seem like it's possible today.
Well,
but he did.
I got to tell you, Chris, this was an amazing conversation. If you told me a year ago you and I'd be talking, I'd be going, wow, I'm a fortunate guy. So good luck with the book. It's called Lessons from Bobby, 10 Reasons Why Robert Kennedy Still Matters, and it's already out. So I can't wait to see it.